Okay, all technology up and running. We are short, still one councillor, but we're going to call the meeting to order, and we do expect him to arrive shortly. Time is now 6:02. This is a regular scheduled council meeting for the District of Oak Bay. As we call the meeting to order, we'd like to acknowledge that the lands on which we're gathering is the traditional territory of the Coast and the Straits Salish peoples. Specifically, we recognize the Lekwungen-speaking people known today as the Songhees and the Esquimalt nations, and their historic connections to these lands and these waters continue to this day. Our first item is a approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Unopposed? Move on to adoption of the minutes. We can move all three and then take any changes as we need to. Moved and seconded. Are there any additions, corrections, changes to the minutes? Give me a second. Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Then we just need to receive the Committee of the Whole minutes, March 21st, 24th, and April 19th. Moved and seconded. Any changes, corrections, additions that people wish to see? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. We are now moving to the, we can just take the rise and report. We'll just do them all at once, 5.1 and 5.2, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Those are now on the record. Thank you for that efficiency. I have actually fairly brief mayor's remarks here today. I want to just let people know, if you're watching at home on the live stream and you wish to address council in the open portion of the public comment, this is a good time to call the 1-855 number and hit *9 to raise your hand, because my comments will be brief and then we'll call on the public. This is the next session, though, is not the section for any of the specifics items coming forward on the agenda. Where we have items that are open for public input, we do ask for public input on those agenda items. So my comments today, just a reminder of that Oak Bay Tea Party is coming up. We have, as well as the Oak Bay Half Marathon this weekend. We are currently scheduled to consider next steps on infill housing on June 6th and the secondary suites for June 13th, just so people are aware. Those will have public input as well at those meetings. And the other piece was just wanted to note that good news or bad news, I guess it depends on which side of the ledger you're on, but the tax notices have gone out. Just for people's awareness, I think probably most are aware, our portion of the taxes is about 5.5% this year, which certainly compares favorably to most of the region in terms of the increases. Based on a median residential property, it's about $14.67 per household per month. It's interesting looking at it. We have about 58% of our total tax collected. We collect about $50 million in tax revenue, of which about 58% of that is collected for our use, and the balance goes to schools, the regional district, and other bodies. So, but those are going out, and the notices will be coming in the mail. So. Forms a fairly important part of our operational pieces, so I thought I'd just make sure that everybody on council and the members of the public were aware that those are going out. That concludes my comments, so just going to public comment and question period, and welcome Councillor Zhelka. And if you're calling in through, wanting to call into the 1-855 number, if you're watching on YouTube, for example, you would hit the, on the agenda, there is a 1-855 number, you hit the meeting ID, and then the passcode, and then you would hit *9 to raise your hand. If you're in Zoom, you would hit the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen. And if you're here in person, we can take your comments here. Are you here just to address council? Is it related to one of the items on the agenda, or just a general comment? It's related to the item on the agenda. Okay, so we'll come to that when we come to that item on the agenda for that public input. But for now, this is just, for those who don't know, and I think we have a few people probably attending this meeting who haven't attended council meetings before, at every council and committee of the whole, we allocate up to 30 minutes for the public to address council if they have questions or comments, things related to the community. It's just a chance for us to be available to the public to raise ideas or issues that they're interest to them and of interest to the district. So That's what this section is. We don't often have large numbers lining up, but given there's more people than usual here, I'll give it an extra moment. I don't see hands raised at this moment to speak to council on items here. I'm just going to look to staff. Is there anybody? I don't see hands raised internally here. Don't see anybody in the hall that's jumping up and down to speak to things that aren't on the agenda.
We have no hands up.
Okay, thank you. So at this point then, I will move on to the next. And I think that's my phone. My apologies. I will turn that ringer off and move on to section number 8 of our agenda. Here we have the first item is just the issue from the committee of the whole. So we made a recommendation at that committee to approve a grant. So perhaps we can just get the resolution moved and seconded. Any other discussion on this item? Councillor Braithwaite?
I'll be voting in opposition as per my previous comments from the last meeting.
Sure, and I expect both all the votes to stay reasonably similar unless people voice a change of opinion at this point. I don't see any other comments, so all those in favor and those opposed. Councillor Green, Councillor Braithwaite, Councillor Appleton opposed. That motion carries. We have Oak Bay Tea Party fireworks approval. You have to recuse yourself.
As I think perhaps, Mayor, I should recuse myself as I sit on the board of the Oak Bay Tea Party Society.
Absolutely fair. Why don't we just let you leave the room, and then the committee room is full, so you probably will have to go through into the office, and we'll come grab you just through the doors there in a second. I don't have the updated agenda piece, and there we go. Taking a bit to refresh. I just want to make sure I am correct on my agenda items here. We are at 8.2. Did this get added to the agenda? It did. Okay. Oh, sorry. Where is it sitting on your agendas? Because mine is not popping up here.
Mayor Murdoch, members of council, so it's sitting near the end of the agenda.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'll move it to there. Thank you. So I will come back to that at the appropriate time then. My apologies. I put that into my... What's that? Yeah, I better call Councillor Braithwaite back into the room then if we're not dealing. Or you know what? If council's amenable, we can just deal with this move it up on the agenda. Sure. Okay, so we'll just use, seeing nods around the table, I'll just operationally move this up on the agenda package. You have the, obviously there's a request here to hold the fireworks at the celebration on June 4th. Is there an applicant here attached to this? And if not, is there a staff person who wants to introduce it?
Mayor Murdoch, I know the Chief McDonald is online, and his staff have reviewed the application from their perspective, and he's available to council.
I don't think this is a very complicated ask, so if there's any questions, we'll have Chief McDonald available to answer them. If not, we can take a motion. Councillor Zhelka?
Move the recommended motion, please.
Moved and seconded to approve the fireworks. Any discussion? Councillor Green?
I just have a question through you to our fire chief. Do we have any sense of how the community is feeling about fireworks at this point? I know in other communities they are controversial at the very least, and sometimes in some communities they have been banned. So I just wondered if we had any sense of the feeling in our community regarding the use of fireworks. Thank you.
That's a big ask, Chief McDonald, to reflect the will of the community. If you have any thoughts on this, go ahead. Perhaps you can really just speak to things that you've heard from the community.
Yes, Your Worship. We typically, we do not accept fireworks at any time without the exception of a special permit, which is in some communities they only allow fireworks on Halloween, or with the exception of a special permit. Bay's case is strictly with a special permit, in this case with a pyrotechnic license. I'm not aware that we've had complaints in the past by limiting it in this way, and hard to comment with regards to what's occurring in other communities though.
Thank you, Chief. Anything else, Councillor Green?
Yes, I appreciate that. I'm sorry the question was a difficult one. I didn't mean it to be, but thank you very much.
No worries, thank you. It's just probably worth just raising the potential of that concern at least for our thought. Any other discussion? We have a live feed here. Is there a way to mute that on the online? Thank you. Any other questions or comments? We have a motion live on the floor. Then I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. If we can get Councillor Braithwaite back, I appreciate us managing that at this time. And for those who are wondering, we do have all municipal councils have an obligation to declare conflicts of interest where there is a real or a perceived conflict, and it can be something as minor as sitting on, and in this case, another board, where your interest might be perceived to be at odds. So I appreciate Councillor Braithwaite you making that declaration, and welcome back to the meeting. I did in fact have it in the wrong order, but we agreed to change our order, dealt with it, and it came back again. So we are now on item number 9.1. So with that, this section of items don't have public input, but we are getting to the next section after this, section 10 that does. So first item on the agenda, or section number 9, is bylaw number 4806. Perhaps we can just get the motion for adoption on the floor.
I'll move that checkout bag regulation bylaw number 4806/2022 be adopted.
Moved and seconded. Just for those watching and curious, these items, this and the other adoption items have had consideration at committee of the whole, and then a discussion at council where we've had first, second, and third reading. We are obligated under law to have a break between third reading and adoption, should there be any sort of sober second thought given to these pieces. So that's what we're doing here. If we think that we're going through these reasonably quickly, we are. Really, it's just if anybody's thought of something new, they would flag it at this point. Otherwise, we're going to go through the adoptions reasonably expeditiously. The motion is live for adoption. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. That carries. Item number 9.2. Get someone to read it into the record.
Your Worship, I would move that elections and voting bylaw number 4284, 2005 amendment bylaw number 4810, 2022 be adopted.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Moving on to item number 3, upland siting and design. We have recommendation for receipt and for approval of the siting and design. We can take them together if someone's so willing to move.
I'll move both recommendations.
Second both.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? There was for approval of the siting and design. Oh, sorry. This is, yes. My apologies. I'm going too quickly here. I was thinking this is one that we had dealt with before. Under our old procedure, we used to deal with these at committee of the whole and come here, and we would approve our recommendation. This is not the situation. My apologies. Yep. We're just rescind the motions here, and we're just going to have an introduction from Mr. Weber, our planner. Welcome, Mr. Weber.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The district is in receipt of an upland site and design application to construct a new single-family home on the property located at 2505 Cotswold Road. The subject property is on the southeast corner of the intersection of Cotswold Road and Uplands Road, is approximately 2,410 meters squared in area, surrounded by single-family homes on all sides, and has an RS2 one-family residential use zoning designation and Uplands OCP designation. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing single-family home, construct a new 2-story single-family home with a basement and approximately 670 meters squared of floor area, construct a new 23.8 meter squared pool and hot tub, construct a new greenhouse with 32.5 meters squared of floor area, construct a new rain shelter with 12.1 meters squared of floor area, and install new landscaping throughout the property. No variances are being requested as part of the proposal, and none of the 19 protected trees on property are proposed to be removed, and 12 new trees are proposed to be planted, resulting in an estimated 62.5% canopy coverage, exceeding the 45% canopy coverage target for the zone required by the tree protection bylaw. Staff have reviewed the proposal and with applicable district bylaws, the Uplands Design Guidelines, as well as applicable policies within the official committee plan, and determined that it conforms. Based on the results of this review, staff recommend that the subject upland site and design application be approved. The application was further reviewed at the May 3rd, 2002 Advisory Design Panel meeting, and the panel members expressed support for the proposal and felt that the design will be an elegant addition to the streetscape. Referencing the slope design, panel members encourage attention to be paid to perimeter drainage to mitigate rainwater runoff. The panel ultimately recommended the application be approved as presented. Staff are requesting council direction on this application, and the applicant and project designer Pamela Ubeda is in attendance this evening along with myself to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weber. We have questions of council to the applicant or staff. Go ahead, Councillor Zhelka.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I guess let me start with a question of procedure through you to staff. I understand that for uplands properties in particular, there's usually a public input or some sort of notice given to public where they can comment on, in particular, uplands designs. I just wanted to, maybe this is a different sort of situation, but I was hoping staff could clarify my confusion around this one, since this is apparently not subject to public input.
Thank you, Councillor Zhelka. That would be a staff question. Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just waiting to see if Mr. Weber would jump in, but upland siting and design applications are very similar to a building permit, or the process for them is considered very similar to a development permit, whereby when the applicant meets certain conditions, there's not a lot of leverage for council, therefore taking public input wouldn't be meaningful. So unlike a development variance permit where there's more flexibility for council to interpret, these ones are straight across the board, so no public input.
Go ahead, Councillor Zhelka.
Follow up, if I may. Thank you so much, sir. I presume there's a sign out front letting the neighbors know what's going on, and also that this meeting is occurring at this time. If they did have any questions, although it sounds like there really is no opportunity for public input at all. I assume there's a sign up at least.
I can field that one if you like.
Go ahead, Mr. Weber.
Yes, there is a sign posted in front of the property, and what it says is very generally that there is a pending building permit application for the property. So it doesn't actually state that there's an upland site and design application or the time that the meeting is being held. And as my colleague said, these type of applications aren't actually open to public feedback. And we just kind of post those signs more so as a courtesy to neighboring properties to let them know that they can expect some change in their neighborhood.
Wait, Councillor Zhelka.
I'm sorry, one last question about this. In the Uplands bylaw, there is a requirement from the Director of Building and Planning with specific to the Uplands areas that 10 days before some change is made to a house or that is approved at council, that notice must be given to the public. So not a courtesy. So is that a different situation, or would that be for this situation? I'm just a little confused around notice and around some of the comments I've heard from a few people in the Uplands where some changes are being made to houses that in the past the neighbors got notice, but it appears they're not getting notice. So I just wanted to understand with respect to this particular development, please.
Thank you, Councillor Zhelka. Mr. Weber, in terms of the, I'm not familiar with the 10-day notice piece that Councillor Zhelka is speaking to, but perhaps you can explain.
Certainly, of course. Yeah, as we do follow the bylaw, and notice is given in the form of the sign being posted on the property. We do post it in conformance with the bylaw, and a sign was posted on the property with the subject application, as well as all other upland site design applications.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I just appreciate the fact that it was posted and it's not really a courtesy thing. It's actually part of the bylaw. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Zhelka. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to staff. I noticed it's on page 11 of the package, and it's the site data zoning review. There's a ballooned portion that is outlined on the site data. I'm just wondering if there was a change, if that's what the reason is for flagging that? Was there a change from the time that it was reviewed by the design panel or since its last review?
Sure, thank you. Mr. Weber?
Thank you. I can't recall specifically off the top of my head, but I believe it was a result of initial staff review of the application and some changes that were requested prior to the application going to the by design panel. The applicant can confirm that there were no changes made to the design since it went to the advisory design panel.
Councillor Patterson?
Yes, just one more brief question. I noticed that where the greenhouse is being built, it's quite close to the neighboring yard, which is a very odd-shaped triangular lot. And the distance of the greenhouse then to that property also complies for setback?
Mr. Weber?
Thank you. Yes, that siting of the structure does conform with the setbacks. And just note that we did have our Park Services staff review the siting of that as well for potential impacts to those trees, and they found no issue with the proposed siting.
Thank you.
No further questions, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Any other questions or?
I'd like to.
Oh, if there's questions, I'll take questions first. Go ahead, Councillor Green. Okay.
I'd like to move receipt and move the staff recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Thank you.
And then I just wanted to say that I really like the design of this house, and I appreciate that they're not taking any trees out at all, and they're not building to the maximum allowable, and I think it's going to be a real nice addition to the neighborhood, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Yes, I would also agree. And I just wanted to mention that with our new development tracker, there is information on applications and the public can track those. So I think that also will assist in notifying the public. And we can also ask the applicant whether or not adjacent neighbors were contacted. So I don't see this as an issue, and it hasn't come up before at any of the ADP meetings in my experience, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Zhelka, you had a comment?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. My compliments to the advisory design panel and the clarity of the reports and the checklist. It's very easy to read and easy to understand, not only for us but also for the public. With respect to that notice, bylaw 3545, the Uplands bylaw, section 4, subsection 1, basically 10 days before notice is supposed to be given, and it also in that notice with very specific wording, it talks about how the building plans and permits are available at Municipal Hall for review. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Zhelka. Any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I also just wanted to comment on my appreciation for the fact that the development has considered sustainability and has adapted for future use of solar panels. So that's very nice to see. And there's no mention made on the applications, but perhaps it's something we will consider as a council in the future as to the net zero readiness of new homes that are being developed, because we don't find that portion out about, there's no statements of that, and particularly where there are builds like this where they are including sustainability in the development, it would be nice to hear about that because it's such a good leadership role. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Do you have something else to add, Councillor Green?
Just one other quick point in terms of sustainability. They are also increasing the tree canopy, which is really heartwarming. And so this is, I think, quite a strong application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Before I call the question, just as a point of explanation for those watching, we don't normally, for single-family homes, obviously comment on siting or design. There's an Oak-Based Special Powers Act dating back, I think, 1935, which requires a panel to review any new builds in the uplands. So because it's provincial law, we do that. It's delegated to council, but first it goes through a professional body of a design panel that reviews the siting and design and gives recommendations to this body. So if this seems a little out of odd for a single family house, that is what we're doing. We're actually obligated to take this consideration for any build within the uplands area. So with that, I don't see any other hands up. All ready to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Now we're moving on to item number 9.4, which is 3393 Upper Terrace Road. Welcome back, Mr. Weber.
Yes, thanks again, Your Worship. The District of Oak Bay is in receipt of an upland site and design application to construct a new single-family home on the property located at 3393 Upper Terrace Road. The property is located on the east side of Upper Terrace Road at the intersection of Upper Terrace Road and Uplands Road. It is approximately 5,348 meters squared in area, surrounded by single-family homes on all sides, and has an RS1 one-family residential use zoning designation and Uplands OCP designation. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing single-family home and garden shed on the property, construct a new two-story single-family home with approximately 1,318 meters squared of floor area, install new landscaping throughout the property. No variances are being requested as part of the proposal, and 13 of the 88 bylaw protected trees on the property are proposed to be removed to accommodate the new home, and 13 new trees planted, resulting in an estimated 73.6% canopy coverage, exceeding the 45% target for the zone required by the tree protection bylaw. Staff have reviewed the proposal with applicable district bylaws, uplands design guidelines, as well as applicable policies within the official community plan, and determined that it conforms. Based on the results of this review, staff recommend the subject upland site and design application be approved. The application was further reviewed at the May 3rd, 2022 Advisory Design Panel meeting, and panel members commented on the sophistication of the landscape design and applauded the use of rainwater management, sustainable practices, and high-quality materials proposed. Panel members noted some concern regarding the roof elements and a desire for more detailed on the elevations, and suggested that the applicant consider further refinement to the elevations. The panel ultimately recommended that the application be approved, with the design consideration that the elevation drawings for the proposed residence be further refined. In response, and since the application initially went to the advisory design panel, the applicant has revised the proposal by extending the gable roof further out over the loggia, where there had been previously a flat roof, and revising the double arch loggias on both the south and rear elevations to single arches. Staff are requesting council direction on this application, and the applicant and project designer, Russ Collins, along with the landscape designer, Bianca Bodley, and consulting, I don't believe the consulting arborist is here in attendance this evening, but I am here as well to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you so much. And I think this is going to have to go to the architect, I think. But I note that there are still sections of a flat roof, I think, from the looking at the drawings. And I'm wondering if those are going to be used for a deck or a patio or anything like that, or is it just going to be just a flat roof that could be used for solar panels or something?
Sure, thank you. Is the architect or designer here with us?
Yes, I'm here today. Yes, we've created a flat roof extension over much of the center portion of the roof on the rear yard to incorporate solar panels onto the roof. We did also have a chimney up there in that location, and we decided to eliminate that so that we would get better results from the solar panels.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you so much. And then my other question is on page 20. Actually, my next question would be, I note that it says that there's going to be 13 protected trees coming out, but I think I read in our arborist report that there's an additional 18 non-bylaw protected trees on site, and 10 of those are going to be removed. So really, in essence, there's a total of 23 trees being removed. Is that correct?
Through the chair, this is Bianca Bodley. I'm the landscape designer, so I can answer those questions. So in total, there are 13 proposed trees to be removed. There are 4 Gary oaks, 3 Mugo pines, and 1 Japanese maple, 1 Monterey cypress, 1 sweet gum, 1 Scots pine, and 2 English yews. So a number of those are really more shrubs than trees. And of the protected trees, there are 4 Gary oaks, and the rest are not protected. So, I mean, they're protected, but they're not a protected species, but they're protected based on their size. So the existing canopy coverage on this property is currently at 75%, and then after we've replanted a number of trees, including 7 Gary oak replacement trees and 6 vine maples, which are native. Post-construction canopy coverage will be back up to 73, and the coverage required for the site is 54%.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. You had a follow-up?
Just so my I'm not sure if you actually answered my question. So there's 23 trees in total being removed.
Ms. Bodley?
13 are proposed to be removed.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to go to our arborist report, which is
So of the 88 bylaw protected trees, 13 are proposed to be removed. So so when trees are demarcated on site, they also demarcate things like shrubs, so such as lilac trees, apple trees, like anything that appears as a tree will be marked, but what is actually counted in the equation for protected trees are things that I guess have become of merit to be a tree based on their size or species.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to follow.
If I may jump in here, yes, looking at the arboriculture inspector's memo, there are 10 non-bylaw protected trees proposed to be removed as part of the proposed development. Generally, as they're not bylaw protected, they're not noted in the report because the applicant could technically remove those at any time without our permission. But yes, there are in fact 10 non-bylaw protected trees that are to be removed.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. And then, so then my next question would be on page 25 of the staff report. There's a area in yellow that shows the invasive species remediation area. And it looks like there's a lot of trees in that area, but I'm assuming that it's only, excuse me, the invasive species that will be removed, or is that and the area where some of those 10 non-bylaw protected trees would be removed?
So to answer your question, this is Bianca again. What is happening in that zone is just the removal of invasive species such as ivy and other noxious weeds. And then what we're doing in that area is restoring it to a native habitat with installing only native trees and shrubs in that area. So no, that is not the area that we're speaking of. It's only the only trees that are being removed are those impacted by the building of the house itself.
Thank you so much.
And the respective driveway. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Are there other questions on the application? I don't see any, so I need a motion here. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
I'll move approval. Would you like me to read it, or?
We'll just do them both. They're both a motion to receive and the motion to approve is fine. I think we're clear about what those are.
Okay.
Yeah. So motion to receive and approve is live. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on the application? Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship, and just wanted to compliment the applicants on the detail provided in the submission. I think that under normal circumstances, an application that came in, with this level of tree removal, I don't think I would be very amenable to it. I think that some of the mitigating factors here for me are that there's obviously been a fairly thoughtful landscape design put together and an adaptation of the structure around the landscape of the site, and in addition, rehabilitation of the existing areas, invasive species control, and things of that nature. And I'd just like to point out that, again, as the applicant has pointed out, there is a minimum requirement for tree cover, which this exceeds even if the trees are removed. But the target that the landowner has set is to essentially come back above that 70% line and get back to something that was fairly comparable to what was originally there, even though that significantly exceeds the minimum requirement. And so that, I think, is a significant step, not just meeting the minimums, but trying to enhance that park-like setting of the upland. So I think that's significant. So I would be in favor of the motion. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Any other discussion on this item? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Good luck with the project, and I'm sure it'll be beautiful when it's done. We are moving on now to item number 10.1. This is subject to public input. This is the notice of motion on gas-powered lawn equipment. We have, now Councillor Ney, you've got the motion here. It's probably worthwhile for you to read, not the whereases, but therefore be it resolved to move it onto the meeting. And if there's a seconder, then we will get to questions and discussion. Go ahead, Councillor Ney.
Thank you. Just to heads up to the council, there's a piece of paper on your desk there that shows a slightly revised version that was in the electronic version of the agenda. So the motion reads, therefore be it resolved that the District of Oak Bay, after consulting through the Cool Kit program, adopt a plan to phase out over a 3-year period the use of gas-powered garden equipment, including leaf blowers on all residential properties in Oak Bay beginning 2023.
So we've all had a chance to read the amended version of that. Is there?
Sorry, yeah, and just to be clear, Mr. Mayor, the amended parts are in bold so that you can see what actually was changed from the original in the electronic version.
Thank you for that. Is there a seconder for the motion? Moved and seconded. Thank you. It's your motion, Councillor Ney. So, do you want to just provide some motivation? And
so, just a bit of context for council. You recall back in November, I think it was 2020, we had a motion on the table that included a phasing out of gas-powered garden equipment in residence as well in the corporation. And at that time, the council decided that we would give direction to staff to work towards the phase out of gas-powered garden equipment in the corporation. And I believe that at some point during this section, Mr. Hidley will come to speak and give an update on the progress that's been made on that. So we also agreed that at some later point, we would come back to consideration of the phasing out with residents. And so it's sort of 2 years hence. And so the reasons for bringing this forward now is that as stated previously, much of the gas-powered garden equipment, people report that they're noisy, they're stinky, they're harmful to users and to the environment. And in many cases, things like leaf blowers, many people would say that they're actually unnecessary. With these concerns, and also that more and more people are working out of home, so the noise becomes especially aggravating for the livability of people in the municipality. We continue to put this forward. So one of the efforts that has been made here in the scripting of this motion is how do we plan to do this, move towards the move towards electronic kind of garden equipment as opposed to gas powered. And my effort has been to do this constructively so that there is minimal hardship on any residents. So to that point, there's a couple things in the motion that have made an effort to do this. One of them is the phase out over 3 years, which allows residents an opportunity to plan for the transition to electronic garden equipment. And over that period of time, one would expect not only that the equipment would become more less noisy and more powerful, more efficient for users, but also the cost would be reduced. It also would give businesses an opportunity to make a business plan for that phase out. And the other part of this motion is that we've introduced the inclusion of consulting with the Cool Kit program. And the timing of this couldn't be better, because really this provides both a top-down and a bottom-up approach to the policy implementation, which really is an ideal kind of scenario to have these kinds of two ways to implement the policy. And with the CoolKIP program, this will provide an opportunity for neighborhoods to get together and work together to and be educated in that context around ways that they can care for their lawns without imposing hardship on the environment or the neighbors. And I have to say, and I hope I'm not out of line, Councillor Patterson, but I have heard what I think is just a wonderful story about what bottom-up leadership can do in a neighborhood, where she's got a whole neighborhood over time, just by talking and working with the neighborhood to phase out from the gas-powered to electronic garden equipment, and that's over a relatively short period of time. So it really shows what the bottom-up work can do, and the bylaw that's being proposed here provides the opportunity for council to give direction and leadership and guidance to the community in a timely way, and combined with the bottom-up CoolKIP program to support the community to implement this in a way that benefits the environment and the neighborhood. So with that, those are my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Wrong button. There we go. Thanks, Councillor Ney. So really at this point, just for those in attendance, both electronically and in person, if for the members of the public who wish to address council on this item, we certainly have a number of things. It's not just yet. Our normal course of action is we will take questions from the members of council. Following that, we'll take questions and comments from the public, and then we'll come back to this table and have a deliberation of the item. Councillor
I'm
Ney?
not sure, Mr. Mayor, whether there's a staff. Mr. Hidley is on call to give some input to update the council on what's happened with the corporation program.
Certainly. Well, if procedurally here, do you wish to make a question of Mr. Hidley? He wouldn't normally just jump up and insert himself, so why don't you ask a question of him?
Could I ask that we
get
an update from Mr. Hidley around the progress that's been made around the transitioning of from gas to electronic garden equipment with the corporation?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Ney. And just for those watching, again, in January of 2021, so just a little over a year and a bit ago, Council gave direction essentially to match our removal of these, but we recognized at the time that there wasn't commercially viable, and so Mr. Hidley's been, our manager of parks, has been keeping an eye on the technological change and its ability to be used for commercial operations, and so hence the ask of staff to have some input on this. So welcome to the meeting, Mr. Hidley. If you can provide us an update of the current state of the union where it relates to electric garden equipment, that would be very helpful.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can you hear me okay?
Can, loud and clear.
Great. I'll first say that there is a natural migration towards electric or battery equipment, and it is rapidly and continually improving, much like vehicles. I'll give you a snapshot of where we are from a parks perspective. We have 40 pieces of small equipment, everything from trimmers to blowers to weed eaters to saws, etc. We currently have 9 of those pieces are electric, and we have purchased those over the last 2 years, with some with great success and some with somewhat limited. But some of the pieces are well liked by the individuals, like our tree climbing saw, which is electric and has wonderful runtime. maybe a little bit less so with some of the weed eaters, et cetera, with their runtime. So yeah, 9 of the pieces are electric. Most of them are the smaller pieces of equipment, but they're working well. But I would say that where the technology is right now, and we've had a lot of conversations with our suppliers, is that the vast majority of homeowners could transition to electric garden equipment right now. The technology is there, and with a lot of the pieces of the equipment, you get similar performance as what's offered in the gas. And the improvements are continuing with the commercial pieces, but with some of the where we get a little bit challenged is in our fall leaf cleanup, where we have 27 kilometers of leaves to look after on tax boulevards, where runtime and the actual blower performance is a little bit of a well, it's actually quite a challenge for us because we have to coordinate that with Public Works. But we see the technology just continually improving, and as I said, once the pieces that come forward are suitable for our needs, we will certainly be using those, and that includes larger pieces of equipment like ride-on mowers for setting up a time to go down and visit the City of Victoria to see their new electric ride-on mower. And just to touch on the toolkit, this does fit in very well with that, because what we're really asking the residents that are involved with the toolkit is to adopt really a sustainability agenda in their household, and this fits in quite nicely. And one of the things that we're trying to do here in Parks when we talk to our contractors, et cetera, is we're asking them about and what battery equipment are you using on your jobs. So we're beginning to push the message out from Parks perspective, and we're also transitioning within our current operating budget to electric equipment when we feel that piece of equipment is sufficient to meet our commercial needs and runtime. So that's where we are from a Parks perspective.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hadley. Go ahead, Councillor Ney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Hadley, thank you very much for that update and overview. Just to clarify, as part of what you've just spoken to was a report out from suppliers. I thought, just clarifying if I got this correct, was that the vast majority of electric equipment on the market now would be adequate for taking care of the needs of residential properties. Did I get that correctly?
That is correct. So I'm using that in the context of myself as the average homeowner looking after all of my garden needs. That would be any trimming, any chainsaw, any grass cutting, any trimming, any blowing. All of that equipment is currently there, ready to use. You wouldn't need anything else. One of the things that is a little bit of a hindrance right now is cost. For example, I can give you a commercial blower is the one that we would buy or have bought in the past is $800. A new one that is electric, which has less blower speed, is $3,600. And we're finding the same issues as other things that are in demand, is that there's supply chain issues, and just getting the piece of equipment is tough.
So those would be cream of the crop, because I see a lot of people using electric now. I mean, and I see them on the shelf at Home Depot and whatnot. So I presume that the cost is quite variable depending on the product, presumably?
The cost can be very variable, yes. But technology is there for the average homeowner to use electric equipment 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ney. I'll go to questions from Council, but just so we're all thinking about the same thing here, I want to make sure I'm just clear on we're just seeing the motion here. Just for my clarification, the language that's sitting here is phasing out over a 3-year period beginning in 2023, so that would be 2023, 2024, 2025. So by the end of 2025, we'd have a plan, like that plan would be to phase it out. That, just so I'm reading that correctly? Okay, just so we're all clear about what that ask is. I have Councillor Green and then Councillor Braithwaite. Green.
Thank you. And through you to Mr. Hidley, Mr. Hidley, the $3,600 price tag, would that be for a commercial grade leaf blower, for instance? Thank you.
Yes, and the majority of the cost is the actual batteries itself.
So a residential or a home-based blower might be cheaper than that, then I'm assuming. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Hidley. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks, Mayor. Actually, you confused me with your last question about the motion. So you made it sound like at the end of 2025 that we would consider then looking at an adoption to phase out. But I think the way I read this is that by the end of 2025, no gas powered. That's correct, right? Okay.
That's correct, yeah.
I'm not good at math, but I think it's 2026.
Beginning of 2026.
Beginning of 2026. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And I just have a couple of questions for Mr. Hidley, if I might. Thanks for the clarification, Mr. Hidley, on the commercial blower. But that commercial blower would probably be something that like for example, a commercial gardener would use. Would be the more like the $3,600 electric blower. Would that be a correct assumption?
That would be a correct assumption. Yes.
Thank you. And then you talked about transitioning to electric equipment. It's great to hear that we already have 9 pieces of electric equipment out of the 40 pieces of small. That's wonderful. And that we've been able to do that over 2 years. I'm wondering if you have a cost in mind. Let's say if tomorrow we needed to go and buy the 31 pieces of small equipment that we don't have in electric right now, and some of our larger pieces. Do we have an idea of what the cost to the municipality might be?
I don't, Councillor Braithwaite, I should have figured that out, but I can certainly get that to you tomorrow.
Thank you. And then, if I can, Mayor, I think that you said something, but when they come forward that are suitable for the needs. Oh, well, that's right. You said that that we'll be getting the equipment when they come forward that are suitable for the needs. We'll get them. So is there any indication on any pieces of equipment that might not come forward within the 3 years that would then put us as a municipality in against the bylaw that we're trying to put forward?
It'd be thanks, Councillor Braithwaite. It would be a difficult question to answer. Our biggest challenge is I don't know how quickly the technology will advance. We just investigated a push-behind mower or a small lawn mower, and it was from Toro Rep. And what we heard was it has a difficult time picking up wet grass and has a difficult time when it gets too hot for it to operate at its 100% efficiency. So there's challenges like that we're hoping that they're able to work through because those mowers will go out and would expect them to run 7 hours a day. So those are the challenges. We're also looking at having charging stations on our trucks to alleviate, especially our boom truck, which the tree guys use to alleviate to be able to continually charge batteries while we're working. So there's lots of moving pieces, but I just can't answer how quickly that technology will be there to suit our needs. But as I mentioned, our biggest challenge is runtime right now and fall leaf cleanup.
Thank you, Mr. Hidley. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. So then, I guess, continuing down the path of whether or not we have the equipment or not, if we had all of that equipment, how will that affect our service levels? Because I'm thinking that with the less powerful electric equipment that it's going to take longer to do certain jobs. I know it does for me using an electric lawnmower. So I'm wondering if you have any idea or any concept of how much extra time or what effect it'll have on our service levels.
Mr. Heidley?
I'll use our fall leaf program as an example for that, Councillor Braithwaite. We anticipate that if we transition to electric equipment right now, it would increase about $30,000 worth of labor. So it would essentially double our cost just because we have to time our program with the public works schedule. So we have very limited time to clear our 27 kilometers of taxed boulevard within their time frame that they send out to the community. So that would be a big challenge for us. And the amount of air the blowers push out right now just isn't, it's not as equivalent as the current gas-powered blower that we use. So it would take a lot longer. So we figured it about $30,000 extra.
Thank you, Mr. Heidley. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
And then, do you have any idea what the cost would be to, I love the idea of having something in the trucks to be able to charge the batteries. Is there any idea of what that would cost to change our vehicles that we have right now to be able to do that?
That could probably be done within our operating budget, and that's a conversation I've just begun with the mechanics of the best way to do that. If it would be a standalone unit or it would have to be wired into the actual vehicle itself.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just my last question is about the decibel count. So I always get confused on this, but a 2-stroke engine is louder than a 4-stroke engine, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so do we know what the decibel count difference is between a 2-stroke engine and a 4-stroke engine? I'm sorry, I should have perhaps sent this to you earlier because I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't know. Sorry.
Well, I know that still the BR600 model that we use is 75 decibels.
Is that a 4-stroke or a 2-stroke, Mr. Heidley?
It's a 2-stroke, but they refer to it as 4-stroke technology. So you still mix the oil with the gas, but it fires once every 4 piston cycles instead of every 2.
Okay, interesting. Anything else, Councillor Braithwaite? Okay, thank you. I think I just want to make sure we're clear because we have a motion in front of us which is specific to residential, which would include commercial workers on residential property, but we are not, the current motion that's still in existence from council addresses our own work, which is leaving it to the technology development piece of this. So I'll put that there. Go ahead. I suppose the other questions. I'll go back to Councillor Green for a second time.
Through you, to Mr. Heidley, thank you very much for all the information, Mr. Heidley. And just in terms of timing, and this may not be easy to answer, but in terms of a corporate plan to convert to e-tools for Oak Bay, do you have a timeline in your head at all? You know, I know this involves public works as well, so other departments, but if you had a magic wand, what would your timeline look like for a complete conversion? Just out of interest. Thank you.
Mr. Heidley?
Ideally, it would be within the 3-year period has been put forward in the motion, but that would take certainly some additional funding in our operating budget and just a little bit of a push out into just getting the equipment here.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm going to go to first time questions first. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Worship. And I apologize, Mr. We don't have our we don't have our director of financial services here, and so I don't mean to put staff on the spot, but I'm just wondering whether or not it might be possible. We've had some funds reserved on the books for climate action grants, and the grant is not yet, the structure of that hasn't been rolled out yet, and needs to be defined, and it's sort of pending resources to be able to cast their minds to that. But I'm just wanting to my mind, this would seem like a good opportunity to provide an incentive grant to Oak Bay homeowners to assist in upgrading equipment under the potential new mandate. So I'm just wanting to confirm, if possible, that I think that those funds are still there. I think I asked our director of finance about this during budgeting time, but I just wanted to check to see whether there's any obstacles to potentially having those funds allocated to an incentive grant for this type of equipment.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. We probably don't have a definitive answer on that, but suffice to say, Council, maybe Mr. Coates, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. At the end of the day, it's Council's discretion as that granting program hasn't come back to us, but it would be the Council's discretion as to how it gets allocated. So I think it's fair to say it could be done, and the decision hasn't been made yet. Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to confirm that you are correct. The funds could be used for that purpose.
Thank you very much. Gosh, it's so nice to be back in person again, where I can catch people's eyes and get the subtle messages as opposed to the weird texts and flags on the screen. I think Councillor Braithwaite, go ahead for a second time.
Sorry, that's actually a really good idea, the incentive grant. I like that. Something that you said again, Mayor, that this was only for residential, so it doesn't include municipal at this point in time. But I guess my question would be, because it says on the use of gas-powered garden equipment, including leaf blowers, on all residential properties, would the boulevard then be considered a part of the residential property, and so the municipality wouldn't be able to use their gas-powered vehicle pieces on the residential boulevards? I know I'm getting into the minutia, but it's a question that I think needs to be answered.
Interesting question. Legally, what is the definition of a residential property? I think it's probably residentially owned, but Ms. Williams or others? Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, it would come down to the ownership of the property. So I would assume the boulevards are publicly owned.
Yeah, that's correct. So that would be the piece. This is a 3-year plan, so obviously subject to some refinement as time goes forward. Anything else, Councillor Braithwaite? Okay. Councillor Zhelka?
Thank you very much, Chair. And speaking to the motion, just wanted to, and by the way, I do look forward to hearing the public input on this item. I'm sure there's going to be lots of interest, and of course, you having an open mind. But I do want to say that, in some ways, from the minutes of the 2001. Especially during the pandemic, and then also seeing the number of technology changes that have occurred over the interim. My thinking on this has changed or evolved a little bit. I'm definitely leaning towards in favor of supporting this. I have been able to take advantage of a number of rebate programs that have occurred over the years, and I guess like any homeowners, you want to take advantage of a good deal. So I remember when I first moved here, one of the local companies was offering a $100 trade-in for an environmentally preferred lawn care alternative, which is a very terrible way of saying a trade in your gas lawnmower for something better. And using an electric lawnmower with an extension cord has never been a problem for me. And I have half an acre of land. And it's good exercise. I must admit, I have a sore back after a weekend of mowing, but on the other hand, I feel alive, so this is a good thing. And with an electric lawnmower, with a wired lawnmower, it hasn't been a problem at all. So with knowing that the technology is there, has helped me to support a resolution like this. I have always had a concern about two-stroke engines. They are incredibly polluting. Anyone who looks up two-stroke engines,
we are dealing with questions at this point before we get to comments on the motions. Yeah, that's okay. We just want to get questions, and then we'll go to the public, and we'll come back to this table for debate.
So with respect to questions, I think the idea put forward with respect to providing climate action grants is a good one. And I'm pleased to see that the question was answered on that one, because that was one of my questions as well. I think the whole question about what the Oak Bay is doing seems to be, a side issue. It's great that Oak Bay district is ahead of the game on this one, like we are on the fact that we are greenhouse gas neutral with respect to our care up programs. That's I don't have any further questions. That's it for now. Thank you.
No problem. And we should have some time for conversation after this, after the fact. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I generally, I do support the motion. Just a clarification on it. It does say that be it therefore be it resolved that the District of Oak Bay, after consulting through the Cool Kit program, adopt the plan to phase out over a 3-year period. So just for clarification, does that mean that there would be more information that would be required to come forward from the Cool Kit program for this to be finalized? Or is the intent, in fact, for Council to adopt the phasing out, and then it would be part of the Cool Kit programming to work with residents throughout the community to give them the information of the intended phase out over 3 years? So just for clarification.
Sure, that's really a question for you, Councillor Ney, and it may be simpler just to strike that, since if it's not dependent on it in the motion itself, with the understanding that Cool Kit's going ahead. But go ahead, Councillor Ney.
It's a good question because it's a program, it's not a body, and it is a bit awkward. Like, how do we consult? What are we asking them for? That kind of thing. I think probably the spirit of that was really more that there would be involvement in the Cool Kit in the rolling it out. And so given this has been brought up, I would be very amenable to just striking out that phrase to mitigate confusion and also a bit of complexity in the moving this forward. Because I do think that the Cool Kit program and those who are involved in that programming will have a lot of ideas, but it won't be relevant to the development of the bylaw necessarily. But it will be to the implementation of the bylaw. So are you looking for an amendment now, or should we just?
Frankly, it's your motion. I didn't record who the seconder was on this. Ms. Morden? I had a couple of hands pop up, so I'm not sure who was officially recorded as the seconder.
We have that down as Councillor Zhelka.
Okay, so Councillor Zhelka, are you amenable to striking that as well? So we have the mover and seconder amenable to making that change. So we'll just, the motion is live on the floor without that. So we're moving after consulting through the Cool Kit program. So that's the motion live right now, is just without that phrase. So thank you, Councillor Patterson, for that question and for the change, Councillor Ney. Anything else, Councillor Patterson? Okay, thank you. So that's fine, and I would just throw out there, since there's some discussion around the viability of this and what will the technology look like as we get closer to that cutoff date, et cetera. There may be, we may want to give some direction to come back and just have that plan reviewed, at the beginning of 2025, for example, just so we can have an update on that state and have the council look at it. That'd be one way of addressing it if we want to move this forward now, but there's still some concerns about attaching a firm timeline to it, so that's something I'll throw out there, not for change at this point. Just listening to the conversation that is happening. I'll go to Councillor Braithwaite again, and then I'll go to the public.
I was just looking at one of the letters that came in, and it asked about uplands and Victoria golf courses. So I just wanted to make sure that we reiterate that it wouldn't affect what happens on the golf courses, because those are not residential properties, correct?
That's my understanding, as it's worded right now. Yeah, thank you. Although I will note they're probably ahead of the curve. All right, so with that, I'm happy to go to members of the public who wish to address us on this item. We have one member in the room here. We have a number online, and maybe some others who in the outside room that may want to come in as well. So why don't you come to the desk? And the order here is just we ask that members of the public just state your name and a municipality of residence for the record. We don't have firm timelines. We try and ask people to stick to 2 or 3 minutes for comments, and we'll get through a number of them that we have here today. For those who are online, you're already doing it. If you're on Zoom, you can raise your hand as you've done using the reactions tab at the bottom of Zoom. But if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, for instance, and you want to reach us, you can call the 1-855 number that's in the agenda, hit the meeting ID and the passcode. Once you're in, you would hit *9 to raise your hand, and you'll show up in our queue, and I will call on you as well by the last 4 digits of your phone number. Same process for everybody. It's a little awkward in this hybrid environment, but if you just state your name, municipality of residence, and feel free to address council. Welcome, sir.
And it's on? Yeah. Is it on now? Yeah, your worship, yeah. My name is Francis Landy. I am a resident of Oak Bay. I've got 2 hats at the moment, because I'm also Hayden Arbour, who was going to speak and who sent all of you a letter, but who is desperately ill with COVID. So I'm, as it were, representing him, but I'll try and summarize what he says. We moved here in 2017. We expected to have a nice, easy, quiet retirement. Instead, we got a huge amount of noise, a barrage from all sides. Spring, summer, doesn't matter what the season. All day, or at least every day, and sometimes several times a day. Mostly leaf blowers, but other things too, but mostly leaf blowers. And they penetrate through our walls, and they penetrate our brains, and they have made this nice, quiet retirement not so nice and quiet. And especially if you're trying to write a book, as I am, every time you start, then there's this big noise. And it's been at very considerable financial and mental cost. I've talked to Councillor Braithwaite about it, but I won't go into that. So it reached a point where I was fed up, and I read this article in the New York Times by Margaret Renkel, it's in your materials, about the extraordinarily destructive effect of leaf blowers on the environment. And I thought to myself, I should do something about this rather than being angry. So I started a petition, which you have. It's now got 677 people. And I was simply blown away by the number of people who signed. I was really surprised at how much. I wasn't alone, that there was a whole community of people who hate leaf blowers. And, you know, I keep on getting people in the street saying, I signed your petition. You know, I don't know these people. A police person said to me, I didn't sign it, but I hope you succeed. I've got tinnitus. And I think you all know the science. Leaf blowers produce an extraordinary amount of pollutants. Hydrocarbons, nitrous oxides, carbon monoxides, greenhouse gases, you know, they're there. One estimate is 10 to 20% of urban emissions. The other side is noise. And noise is a very underestimated health problem in our society. It's a bit like smoking was 60 years ago. Many people, including people very close to me, are sensitive to noise, especially people with PTSD, with suffering from tinnitus, suffering from stress disorders. And it's a problem that needs to be addressed, and in many ways is addressed. Now I just want to talk about 1 or 2 other things, and then I'll quit. Electric leaf blowers are now as cheap, as powerful, carbon neutral, and much quieter than gas-powered ones. The most powerful leaf blower on the market is now an electric one, the Ego 765, which costs $469 at Rona, including battery and charger. and it's got dual speed. So if you're on low speed, the battery lasts for 3 hours. The second thing is that I know everyone is concerned about the effect on businesses. Yeah, I am too. According to Hayden Arbor's long letter, there's a big initial investment. It cost him $7,500. That's his estimate. It's rapidly made up in fuel and maintenance costs. He quotes a friend of his who runs a gas-powered company, which has $20,000 to $22,000 per annum in fuel and maintenance costs. So there is an investment. According to the evidence, this is made up. But the real point under under everything is that we all have to adapt. Garden companies especially have to adapt to environmental change. And this is what's at the basis of all this. I also want to say, and can I conclude, I'm really thankful to Mr. Hyde-Lay for his comments. I'm really, really thankful to Councillor Ney for her friendship and support. I'm actually really thankful to all of you whom I've spoken in the last few months. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Landy. And you're welcome to stay if you wish.
Oh, I'd love to stay. I really would.
And we'll move on to the next speakers here. So we have some in-house, one more in-house, is that correct? While we change it over, why don't I go to someone online? I think we had Ms. Carolus had her hand up first, so why don't you introduce yourself and name and municipality of residence, and you're welcome to address council. You are still muted, however. You're going to have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I thought you had that power. Anyway.
Very limited power as mayor. It's just the reality.
Okay, so I'll just read what I wrote. Here goes. So good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Andrea Careless, and I live at 2439 Heron Street in Oak Bay. And I'm speaking in favor of the motion on gas-powered leaf blowers. So as you know, I'll just repeat again, gas-powered leaf blowers release gases such as carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, which again, as you know, is a hugely powerful greenhouse gas, volatile organic compounds or VOCs, and nitrogen oxides, also PAHs, which is polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs. They also emit fine particulates, which you're probably aware of are a key constituent of smoke, and they actually cause very significant health problems, worse than smog at this point, and closing the windows doesn't protect you from them. As well, VOCs and nitrogen oxides form tropospheric ozone, which is another greenhouse gas. As well, there's the problem with fuel spillage into the ground. I recognize the leadership that council has shown in not just declaring a climate emergency, but doing something about it. So I really feel like I'm preaching to the choir and that you are green. And as Kermit the Frog once said, it's not easy being green, but you're doing it. So good. Enhancing the active transportation network, reducing emissions in current and new buildings, which is huge, and implementing Cool Kit come to mind. So I believe that Oak Bay should once again show leadership locally and nationally and phase out gas-powered leaf blowers. Excuse me. Vancouver is phasing out gas-powered equipment for personal and commercial use by 2024, and this includes all gas-powered equipment, not just leaf blowers. Vancouver Councillor Sarah Kirby-Young says zero emissions replacements for gas-powered tools are available and have been well received by some commercial companies. Sorry, I actually have COVID, which is why I'm not there today. But there's a cost associated with transitioning to electric. So Vancouver is allowing 2 years for companies to transition and for costs to go down. I worked in the BC government's air quality, climate change, and environmental health departments for over 20 years. And I want to say that there were times when we re-regulated bans or phase outs that didn't make industry and small business very happy, understandably. So in every instance, we received strong pushback in the form of, we can't do this, we'll lose money, it's not fair. And those are valid concerns. But in every case, industry, small business, and individual citizens were able to meet the deadlines and follow the new rules without any hardship that we heard of. Case in point, the tanning bed industry vehemently fought back when we banned people under 18 from using tanning beds. It said tanning beds were harmless and small businesses would be destroyed, but they're doing fine. Having said that, I truly respect the concerns of commercial operations about moving to electric leaf blowers. So I think a 3-year phase out is totally appropriate. And finally, I just have a question through the mayor for Chris Hyde-Lay. I'm talking about fall cleanup, needing a lot of blowers and costing a lot. I'm just wondering, do we have to, and I just don't know, do we have to clean up all those leaves? Do we have to clean up the boulevards? Do we have to clean up the parks? Anyway, I'll leave that with you. And so despite the fact that there'll be a little bit of hardship, I recognize that. I think that because the environmental concerns are so great that this is justified. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Careless. I think I can answer for Mr. Heideley in that he does have to because, or they have to because it's our policy to do so, so they can't not do that. I also say it's my opinion, it's a good policy in that we want people to love their trees, and so things that we can do to help them get rid of the annual mess that does get formed is probably a positive thing. How we do that, of course, is always up for change and consideration of how we manage that large volume of leaves that come off the trees each year. But Mr. Heideley, did you have anything you wanted to add in terms of the necessity of the annual pickup?
Thank you, Your Worship. The only thing that I would add is that leaving some of the leaves in certain areas certainly is a challenge for our storm sewer system with annual plugging, et cetera, when we get the fall rains.
Well, we would like to see more and more of the composting and pieces on site. Sometimes with our very large tree canopy goals, sometimes that's not always viable on the site. We have someone in person here, so if you could push the button in front of your microphone so we can hear you. The people online can hear you more particularly. If you could just state your name, municipality of residence, and then welcome to address council. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Sasha Izard. I live in Salish. I am the sole proprietor of a small gardening business that has been using all-electric lithium-ion battery for the last 4 years. I can be contacted at sizard@telus.net for information about electric equipment. Please do not contact me for gardening services. I already have a full roster of clientele. The business case. Gas is extremely expensive, and anyone who has used the big backpack leaf blowers knows full well that they are utter gas guzzlers that require numerous refills in an active landscaping situation. In comparison, it costs something like 10 cents to recharge a battery. The tech has improved significantly. One charger can now charge 4 units simultaneously. That is approximately 5 hours of battery time on 1 hour's charge. The latest batteries now have 50% more capacity than batteries 4 years ago, and their lifespan has now doubled to an average of 8 years. There is far less maintenance on the equipment, mainly because there are far less movable parts, drastically reducing expensive mechanical bills. There is a lack of annoyances that gum up equipment, like carbonization that can send equipment to weeks of repair time, which is utterly disabling and uneconomical for an ongoing and active business. Yes, the initial capital outlay can be on the expensive side, but it pays off in the long run. The demand for better, much less polluting and quieter equipment means people are often willing to pay a bit more for the service, especially because their neighbors are going to like them a lot more for it. People know a better technology when they see it, and it doesn't take much time for them to realize that they drastically prefer to have workers using far cleaner and less noisy equipment, and they feel it when it comes to their own well-being and that of the environment around them. A garden is an environment after all, and the sound of birds chirping is far more conducive to tranquility of mind than the sound of a high-decibel engine that you can hear across the bay. Pollution. It has been shown in scientific studies that gas leaf blowers can release 299 times as many hydrocarbon emissions as an SUV. Why is that? Smaller leaf blowers, weed whackers, and many other garden power tools use two-stroke engines that cause incomplete combustion. That is why you get that dense, oily, smoky haze emanating from them that is very harsh in the lungs. Two-stroke engines are a disaster for the environment. The big backpack blowers generally have four-stroke engines. Those are the same engines used in motor vehicles, only unlike motor vehicles that are mandated To have catalytic converters which scrub much of the hydrocarbon emissions, preventing them from being released as pollution. There is no such regulation for garden equipment, making garden power tools one of the worst polluting emitting industries in North America. Health. Gas leaf blowers kill, and to a lesser extent, even electric leaf blowers kill. That is a sad fact. It is a fact that is seldom, if ever, mentioned in the public, but is one that is clear in the health literature. Leaf blowers stir huge amounts of particulate matter into the air at high velocity. Many of the particulates they stir up, including carcinogenic heavy metals and silicon particles, are so small that they can lodge in the lungs, and many of them will never leave the lungs. Asthma can be formed and exacerbated, and worse, silicosis can form, as was and still is common in the world for workers in dusty mines. Silicosis kills, cancer kills. Particulate matter lodged in the lungs is known to cause sudden death. In many ways, the landscaping equipment industry is in the same position regarding their products as the tobacco industry was in the 50s and 60s. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Izzard. Thank you for coming tonight.
You're welcome.
I'm going to go back online here. I have, in the order I saw them, which is the only order I have, Dr. Phelps, or sorry, Dr. Bondaroff. I'm not sure. So perhaps both. This is why we have you introduce yourself, and I don't do it. If you could, you've unmuted yourself. If you just give your name and municipality of residence, you're welcome to address council. Welcome.
Yes, hi, good evening, friends. And it's Dr. Teal Phelps Bondaroff, he, him, it's a mouthful. And I'm joining you from just by Rutledge Park in Saanich. And first of all, a huge thank you to Councillor Ney for presenting this motion and for council for considering it. It's really inspiring to see a council that's taking issues like reducing our carbon footprint and noise pollution seriously. So thank you, and I do hope you adopt this motion. We've already heard some really good reasons why you should do this. I wanted to reiterate a couple of them. I think we can't underscore the health impacts of both noise pollution and emissions enough. Sleep deprivation and disruption from noise pollution is a serious problem. And there's some really interesting statistics on the sheer impact of noise pollution. There was a study done by the World Health Organization of Western Europe, and they found that 1.6 million healthy life years are lost every year due to exposure from environmental noise. It's really hard to conceptualize what a healthy life year is, but that is a lot. And there was another study done by the University of Michigan that found that lowering sound exposure by 5 decibels would save in healthcare costs $3.9 billion in the United States and reduce hypertension by 1.4% and coronary heart disease by 1.8%. What got me interested in this issue in the first place was reading the research on it, and it's really eye-opening and ear-opening, as it were. And what it shows you is that noise pollution is a serious problem, and we should be working to reduce it. And on top of that, we're not just talking about for residents, we're talking about workers. Now, I heard you folks talking about the cost of extra worker time, but we do also need to consider the health of workers who are working for the city of Oak Bay and time lost from injury and illness, from inhaling fumes, and from noise pollution. And operating machines for a long period of time without taking breaks, which are requirements as per BC health and worker standards. So that's really important to note. And we've already heard also how the environmental impacts of dust pollution, destroying insect habitat, those are all important. There's a couple other angles I wanted to mention, though. So when it comes to emissions, you have these incredibly inefficient two-stroke engines on a lot of these tools, and they produce huge amounts of hydrocarbons that are unburned. And we've already heard a bit about that. But there's also an equity angle to noise pollution. There's been a lot of studies done in large cities that show that lower income communities have higher noise pollution with concomitant health impacts. And so from an equity perspective, there's a strong reason to do this. I know we're all quite well off here in the CRD, but we will find that lower income parts of the district are those that will have often the most noise pollution. So there's an equity angle. And then finally, just talking about the other alternatives. I know we've heard people talking about alternatives. The alternatives are here. I was just looking up while we were talking here for residential properties. You can find looks like an electric powered leaf blower for like $150 at various local shops like Canadian Tire. That's not too bad, especially given the fact that you're not paying for your gasoline. And so the fact that you have alternatives like manual, like raking as well as an option, and I've seen some great videos on YouTube of people racing a rake versus a leaf blower. The rakes do surprisingly well, friends. And some of the evidence I've seen is that overall electric models tend to be 40 to 70% quieter, but of course it does depend on the model and the make that you're comparing them to. And there hasn't been a lot of empirical research done comparing different tools in that respect. And finally, I just want to talk about savings. So there hasn't been conversations about the cost of this kind of transition, but there was a couple of questions I'd like staff to ask, council to ask to staff if they could. The first one would be, how much does Oak Bay spend on gas and oil for its current fleet of tools? So we heard the conversation about transitioning, but I'm guarantee you folks are spending a lot of money on gas and oil, given the price of gas. So it'd be very interesting to know how much money we'll be saving in the long run, not putting money towards gas and oil. And I was also wondering if we could figure out what the cost of offsetting the current carbon emissions from Oak Bay's fleet would be. Because that's often something we forget, the externalities of our environment. We think, well, we have these direct costs of buying new tools, but if we didn't buy these tools, what would be the cost? And so I'll leave you with that thought. One of the things that I'm inspired by is seeing municipalities step up and take action to little actions, thousands of little actions to fight things like climate change and our emissions. We have to do that. We have no choice. And if we can't make little steps like this, then our ability to combat climate change is absolutely hopeless. So what we really do need is hope, and we need action. And so I'm hoping that today Oak Bay will step up and take one small step in a longer journey that we all have to be taking to fight climate change, to reduce emission, to improve health and well-being, and to make Oak Bay a happier, quieter, more welcoming community. So thank you very much, and I hope you'll vote in favor of this motion.
Thank you, Doctor. And I'm going to go back into our room here. We have another person in person who wishes to address council. You heard the rigmarole. If you could hit the button at on the microphone to turn it on. It's been all been sanitized for you. Just your name, municipality of residence, and then we're here to hear what you have to say.
Okay, let's move this. Good evening, everyone. Is that audible enough?
Plenty audible, absolutely.
Good.
And,
yeah, I do AV stuff, so I should know this, but I've never.
You can
worked
actually
with this.
push it an inch or two away from you still.
Oh, okay,
Good,
sure,
yeah, there
sure,
we go.
that's fair. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dylan Kelk, and I was born and have lived in Oak Bay for decades. I'm actually in Esquimalt right now, but I've lived off and on and grew up there during my childhood. So over the last few years, I've worked alongside others in this community to reduce and mitigate the effects of climate change. In that sense, I'd like to address the discussion around banning or phasing out the use of gas-powered garden equipment. There's, of course, no shortage of scientific, economic, health, and practical reasons why we should do this, which has been eloquently stated by many of the people that have already spoken. But I'd like to approach this from another perspective. So, in my experience, I think the hardest thing about trying to make your community, and in a larger sense the world, a better place is battling an overwhelming sense of hopelessness. In this sense, I don't think it matters whether you're a council member, a volunteer for an organization like Lead Now or BC SEA, Friends of Uplands Park, whether you're sole proprietor of a proprietorship that provides renewable-based energy garden care, or whether you're an elementary school student who's passionate about recycling. It's just a matter of time until you confront the selfishness of humanity and you face despair. And you give and you give and you give, and the world doesn't change. You sacrifice your mental health and energy to a cause day after day, month after month, year after year. And at the end of the all, it just never quite feels like enough. We still miss our emissions targets. The corporations of the world still keep perpetuating the corporations of the world keep perpetuating ecocide and bleeding the world to death. Our forests still burn. Our biodiversity still perishes in heat waves, droughts and floods. We ask people to sacrifice the tiniest amount of convenience or prosperity to protect our future, and we're insulted and ridiculed for it. Or we're told that we're going about it the wrong way by people who have never lifted a finger to address the problem in the first place. Now, I assume community leaders like yourselves struggle with this too. You sacrifice the time you could be spending with your families and your friends to make our community better. And at the end of the day, it's often a thankless job. So, no matter what we do or how hard we're trying, we're always battling with the sense of futility. So the reason I'm bringing this up isn't because I think things are hopeless or to trivialize what positive developments council's accomplished, people like Francis and Andrea and Teal and Sasha have done. I'm saying this because I think we desperately need to change this perspective. We have to start living in a world where we can wake up and not just vaguely hope that we'll make a difference, but know that we'll make a difference. So in that sense, I urge you, please approve this recommendation to ban or gradually phase out the use of these things. Please don't let our efforts to move in the right direction be for nothing. The reality is that we're not willing to make smaller changes like this, just as Teal said, as quickly as we can. We don't have a hope of making larger ones to prevent catastrophic climate change. We have to see that we can make progress or we've lost this spiritual battle. Thank you very much to Council for inviting and listening to me here and for your services to Oak Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Kelp. I'm going to go back online, and we have T_Yar. If you may unmute yourself. You're welcome to turn on your video if you feel comfortable. You're not required to. And you can just again state your name, municipality of residence, and we will take your comments. Welcome.
It looks like my camera's turned around the wrong way. You're looking at my feet. And I've been through this before, and it takes a while for me to get this machine to do what it's supposed to do. So
You can turn off your video if you want. It's fine.
are you finding my feet distracting? I hate it when this happens. Okay, just my voice. I won't talk for very long. I'm Tracy R. I live in Victoria, and but I work at Oak Bay High. And everybody's already said all the things that I was going to say, except that no one's mentioned the IPCC report and how they have basically very recently come out and said, we've got about 3 years and it has to all happen now. My kids know this. My kids who come to Oak Bay High every day, they feel like they're being abandoned. They feel like the older generation just really doesn't take seriously the fact that they don't have a future unless we get our act together. They're really upset. There's a real mental health crisis going on in my building. And I'm constantly reassuring the kids and saying, don't worry about it. It's going to happen. We're a herd animal. Any moment now. I don't know which tornado or heat dome or fire is going to really bring it home to my generation, because I'm a boomer, that this is real and we are going to be screaming at our politicians for change. And the good news, boys and girls, is that technology already exists. That's the good news. We can do this because it's already all there, and it's just a matter of political will, and it's just a matter of everyone collectively understanding what's coming our way, and that's going to happen any moment now. And then they walk to school, and people are operating leaf blowers, and they know that these things are terribly polluting. They learn this stuff in their science classes. They're putting solar panels on the school and rehabilitating Bowker Creek. They're doing everything they can in their power to try to make a difference within the tiny sphere that they operate. But I really feel strongly that we need to send a message. We need to send a message to this generation that we do care. We do care about their future. And I guess that's it. I'll leave it there. And you guys seem to, your meetings are way better than SD61 board meetings. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Yar, and hopefully less entertaining. That's always the goal. We have one more member of the public in the office here to speak to us, or two together. Welcome. Again, you heard the rigmarole. If you can hit the button in the middle, you can just state your name and municipality of residence, and you're welcome to address us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name's Colin Moorman. I live on Goodwin Street in Oak Bay. I simply want to say how excited my wife and I are to think that we can possibly, if you make the decision tonight, sit on our balcony without having our pleasant experience ruined by workers doing what they have to do, but at this point very noisily, and that is a great cause of great distress to us. The only other thing I want to say is, might I respectfully suggest that the motion could have a month and a day included, where the motion currently says beginning in 2023, that could comply even if it were December the 31st, 2023. Whereas if it specified January 1st, April 1st, or something like that, then everyone would know precisely when that was to begin. That is all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moorman. I'm just looking at my list of planned speakers, and I think we've got to the end of that list. So there we have Ms. Woodland as well. I'm not sure. I think unable to make it. I'm not sure if there's any. So again, if anybody's online and wishes to address, you're welcome to do so. I just confirm we have nobody else in person that wishes to address us. And I'm just going to ask staff, I can see if people go through the 1855 number. They would show up on my screen as well, I believe. But I just want to confirm with staff, there's no other members of the public who have raised their hand. We can lower the hand of Ms. Yar because that's they've already spoken. And I think that resolves the public input portion of this. Not seeing any other hands popping up, so we're good to go back to this table. So I rudely interrupted Councillor Zhelka as he was making comments as to deal with just questions. But really back at this table here, we have the motion laid out in front of us as it is, and really would look to council to speak in favor or against, or if there's any suggested other pieces. Councillor Ney.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question through you to staff regarding the last speaker's comment about when in 2023, and I'm just wondering, should this go through at the council table, what kind of a timeline might we expect for the sort of drafting of a bylaw, given all the other things on the agenda, and what would be the process for getting there?
Thank you, Councillor Ney. And there's probably two parts. There's the if this passes to go, people are aware and it gives them the 3 years notice. And there's a bylaw that actually would allow for the enforcement within that time. But Ms. Williams, I'll probably go to you on this one if in terms of timelines attached.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Council. At this time, staff is not able to give you a best guess on the timeline, but what we could commit to is that we could come back with a report that will lay out the options for that would be considered in the plan you wish to adopt. So we will look at options, whether it's financial implications to the district, incentives to the public, what's the regulatory framework that we need to put in place, what's the education piece for the public. And as a part of that, we may be able to, at the onset, provide you with a timeline for implementation, but there will have to be ministry approval on regulations, et cetera, because we are encroaching on environmental issues. So I wouldn't want to pin us down to a specific date in 2023, but that report should be able to provide you with a timeline.
I mean, so in terms of process, what would a bylaw be drafted at the end of the 3-year phase-in, or would the bylaw be at the front end? Yeah, that would guide that with that date in mind. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ney. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to follow up on a comment that Ms. Williams made, and did talk, because I did introduce the concept of incentive programs, and Ms. Williams made reference to that. I'm just wondering whether there needs to be a specific amendment to the motion on the floor to ask for options about an incentive program, or whether or not that could just be considered as part of the larger motion, whether staff would include such things as an option in the report in any case.
Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the motion as it stands will suffice. An incentive program would naturally be something that we would want to offer up to council as one of the options as you roll out a program of this significance.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
I'm sorry, so just going back to something that Ms. Williams said, that, because I'm a little bit confused now, are you saying, Ms. Williams, that it's better for us to have a report come back to us before this motion goes forward? Like a report for what you were saying about the incentives and the I think you said something else in there. I can't remember now. Sorry. The environmental. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I think the question is asked, Ms. Williams. I think just for some clarification, this is before the bylaw is produced, I believe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes. If this motion passes, the next steps would be to bring that report back, and that will then provide you the options that you can incorporate into adopting a plan. And from that, we would develop the regulatory framework based on what council lands on.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. And I just have a question also. Are we saying that in the motion, and I just wanted a little clarification, are gas-powered leaf blowers the first item beginning in 2023 that will be banned, and that it will be other equipment that will follow to the end of 2025 or early 2026? I wasn't sure about the process. Thank you.
Councillor Nate, do you want to answer that?
The intent here is to begin the phase out of all garden equipment as per, recommended by staff report, including the leaf blowers, sometime in 2023 when staff brings that after the report.
Right. But just to be clear, with that 3-year timeline. Right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments at this point? Go ahead, Councillor Green.
I'm sorry, just one other question. One of our guests, the doctor, mentioned the cost of gas and oil to the municipality. I just wondered through you and Mr. Hidley, you may not be able to specifically address this, and I'm sorry it's a last minute question, but I too am curious about our annual costs for gas and oil. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Mr. Hidley, do you know? Do we break it out by the small equipment piece? Mr. Hidley, oh, there we go.
Yes, sorry, I had a bit of a tough time. I could find out for you, but I can tell you that the large garbage truck burns $14,000 worth of fuel annually. The small equipment wouldn't be anywhere near that, but there would certainly be savings with the transition to electric equipment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there other comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Zhelka.
Thank you very much. I understand during the pandemic, the noise bylaws throughout British Columbia were essentially made null and void to ensure supply chain issues were not affected by local authorities' noise issues. And I understand in Oak Bay, our noise bylaw generally says that equipment is supposed to stop at about approximately 7 p.m., if I understand correctly. The question through you, Chair to staff, is are the noise bylaws reinstated yet? And if not, is there any idea when they may be, please? It is more of a provincial question, but I thought maybe staff might know this at this time. It has to do with that ministerial order, I think M192, I don't remember.
Ms. Williams, is there any suspension of our noise bylaw?
There was.
Currently?
Thank you, Your Worship. Not that I'm aware of. I do know that Council made a decision on enforcement of issues that were non-health and safety related, but I'm not aware of a provincial ban on the noise bylaw.
Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a question. I will speak to the motion on the floor, and I will happily support the motion that's put forward by Councillor Ney. I'm a firm believer in, and we have already started to do this in various aspects of the district's operations, as far as being leaders in requesting new technology to drive change. So as an organization that has the ability to purchase vehicles and equipment, and has the ability to set standards for those types of things, if you establish a standard and a timeline for that standard to be met, then it can assist in driving technology and driving the availability of new technology. So I think that this is definitely an opportunity to do that. And as a number of people have said, the technology moves extremely fast, and the options that are available now will be quite a lot more even in a year or two. So, and we have a great opportunity through the existing already budgeted for climate action grants to potentially incentivize that for residents. We're a community that consistently and regularly prides itself on its landscaping and its gardens and its yards, and those are things that people identify really clearly with Oak Bay and really value about Oak Bay. So I see the requirement to adopt a more environmentally sustainable way of maintaining your yard as a great lever that we have as a community, in terms of equipment that gets used regularly around the community that we have an opportunity to affect change through. That's an avenue for affecting change. And I'm just really pleased that this is coming forward, and I think that we really have the opportunity in front of us to do this and to do it in a way that has a positive effect on the community, and we can support the community through that transition. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. I have Councillor Braithwaite, then Green, then Patterson.
Thanks so much, Mayor. I was so pleased to see this come when I sat down with a different timeline on this, because honestly, to have it be implemented in 2023, I think it would have been a recipe for unintended consequences and chaos, like trying to get people to replace their equipment in less than a year. What would happen to all of that equipment going into the landfill or into the recycle? What about the supply chain issue for equipment, etc.? That would have been a big concern to me, and it would almost have been almost like us imposing a tax onto our residents to say, you now have to go out and spend X number of dollars to be able to do your lawns. And so that would have been like increasing taxes for residents, say it's going to cost them $1,800 or $1,200 to go out and replace their equipment. That's a big chunk of money to some people. I still think what I would really like to see to be able to get my full support for this motion, which I do support, but I would really like to see the timeline extended just a little bit. I think that 3 years might be prove prohibitive to some people to be able to replace the equipment that they have, and especially to some gardening businesses within Oak Bay. I agree that they should all end up with electric equipment. I think that is definitely the way to go. I wish we could do a friendly amendment to make it either 4 or 5 years before it's implemented, because that's where I would feel a lot more comfortable. I think that I think that people would be more amenable to that. It would give us more time to educate people. It would give us more time to get the technology, to see where the technology goes. And people, maybe by then we can figure out what we're going to do with all these batteries, because that's the other issue with the electric equipment is the batteries. And we see that with the cars and with the bikes, etc. So that I worry about that piece a little bit. So I would love to support this. I would like to attempt an amendment to the timeline, and I will not go for the 5 years, which is where my head was kind of going first, but I would go with 4 years to implement this over a 4-year period starting at the beginning of 2023. And I would like to see if someone would like to support that.
So just so we're clear before I seek a seconder, you're in the motion that's in front of us. Your motion to amend is to change the word 3 to the word 4.
Correct.
So it would read in the bold, over a 4-year period.
Right.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Green? That's just moved and seconded.
Sorry.
So go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite. Do you want to add anything?
No, I think that just for me, the 4-year sits a little bit better. Again, I'm totally supportive of moving towards getting rid of our gas-powered gardening equipment, especially on our residential properties, and hopefully soon after that on our municipal properties as well. But I just feel that for our community and for some of the letters that I've read in regards to people finding it difficult to maybe afford to be able to replace their equipment, I would like to see us give them a little bit more time to be able to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Is there any other discussion on that motion? Go ahead, Councillor Name.
Speaking against the amendment, I do appreciate what Councillor Braithwaite is doing, is concerned about, but I really think 3 is a lot of time, actually. I see that Vancouver's going to do a 2-year phase in, and the reason is here is, one, we've got the Cool Kit, which provides a platform to educate, to motivate, to and incentivize this transition for neighborhood nodes. And I think that's going to be a very critical tool to support the transition. And I think in the next 3 years, the technology is going to advance and the costs are going to be reduced in dramatic ways. The way technology moves right now, 3 years is a long time. And I think we see that with all kinds of technology. So because the cost will come down, the technology will be advanced, that 3 years is a long time. So I think it's really more than adequate, the 3 year. So I'll speak against it.
Any other speakers? I was just like saying a couple words. I'm not going to support the amendment. I agree with the sentiment. I have some concerns. I think where I'm that concern is ameliorated considerably. It's just the approach being taken here. I was, you know, this is going to go back if this passes. We'll have a plan. Honestly, in that time frame, if things, you know, if it's obvious that, say, I don't know, ride-on lawnmowers are still not addressing it, we can always make exemptions as we go forward, right? Those are things that we could be considered, but I think we need to send a clear message, and I think the timeline is reasonable to kind of give people that working, and then if things are not possible in the course of that, that would be something to consider. But I think the 3-year time frame actually is reasonable in this case. So I may not be, and I think that's ultimately for, you know, council to consider looking at it. But I think it's a great place at this point to start and give that timeline. So I'm not going to support the motion, although I totally support where it's coming from in terms of that direction. We'll see others. Oh, Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate Councillor Braithwaite's perspective. I was feeling very similarly before this evening, and then I started thinking about it, and I think I was persuaded primarily by the number of speakers that weighed in, and thinking especially about generations coming forward and that sense of hopelessness. I've certainly had that feeling myself. I don't think it's age specific, but I am persuaded that the 3 years is probably reasonable. And I just wanted Councillor Braithwaite to know that I seconded the motion for discussion. I think it was worthy of discussion. Thank you.
Hey, Councillor Braithwaite, you can still motivate.
Sorry, I just wanted to add, I did forget to say one thing, and that was I wonder at people who have disabilities that perhaps they might not be able to, you know, use an electric. I guess if they can use electric, they can use gas powered, or if they can use gas powered, they can use electric. But I just worry about aged people and what kind of a strain that might put on them. That's all. I'm done.
That is a separate issue from the one of the time. So I think, but since you raised it, there's a question I sort of had at the back of my mind as well. So perhaps Ms. Williams, in this report that would come back, I'm assuming things like dealing with exemptions for disability purposes, possible mechanisms for making requests for extensions based on financial need, et cetera. Those pieces, those sorts of things, not those specifically necessarily, but you talked about the staff report coming back. I'm assuming, is it fair to say those sorts of contemplations would come back to council as part of the bylaw piece? Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I would expect that the staff member writing this will provide a very fulsome report that considers all of the possible barriers and provide some options for council.
Thank you. So the motion right now is on the floor is to change from 3 to 4. Go ahead, Councillor Zhelka, on the motion to amend.
Yeah, I won't be supporting the motion to amend, but I do appreciate the opportunity to just talk about how fast we want to move this along. You know, the IPCC report that came out, as mentioned by one of the speakers, definitely is a motivator for me to try and move this along and bring hope not only to my kids, but to the other kids here in Oak Bay. And I think we need to lead by example. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zhelka. I see no speakers on the motion to amend. Sorry, Councillor Patterson, you want to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I do appreciate Councillor Braithwaite bringing it forward, but I won't support it. I think that we all agreed as a council that the Cool Kit program was important to go forward, and since that is already underway, I think that certainly the 3-year window of opportunity is reasonable for the volunteers who are going to be rolling out that program to work with it. And I think that a lot can be accomplished in the 3 years. I know certainly that there's the technology, I think, as Mr. Heideley conveyed to us, technology has improved dramatically, and that's because we already have a decade of technology improvements on this. So it's not new, and we're seeing more and more phase out around the neighborhood. So I think 3 years is entirely possible.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Do I see any of the speakers on the motion to amend from 3 to 4? Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just because I'm speaking against the motion on the floor, I figured I would just give my rationale and similar to what others have said. And I do appreciate Councillor Braithwaite bringing it forward. For me personally, the potential for an incentive program to help defray some of the costs for residents, for me anyway, is a key sort of mitigating factor to the phase-in period. So I appreciate the intent of it. For me, I think that incentive program and being able to assist people with that transition helps mitigate that concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, I'll call the question on this is on the motion to amend from 3 to 4 years. All those in favor? And those opposed? Councillor Patterson, Councillor Ney, Councillor Zhelka, Councillor Appleton, Councillor Green, Mayor Murdoch, all opposed. That motion fails. So we're back to the original motion here. Is there any further? Actually, I still had a speaking order. Councillor Braithwaite, you still have the floor. Did you want to add anything else? Okay, thank you. Councillor Green, then Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you very much, and I really do appreciate this motion coming forward. I know this has been in and around the conversation for, was it 10 years, I think, much like secondary suites, actually. So I will be supporting the motion. We have made the conversion to an electric or battery-operated lawnmower, and the best part about it is that it's very lightweight, easy to handle. It does a really good job, but we also don't have to store gasoline on the property, which I was never comfortable with, nor do we have to take a heavy gas-powered lawnmower into for service every year. So huge advantages apart from all of the climate advantages. In terms of leaves and leaf blowers, I've noticed a lot of the commercial landscaping companies in Oak Bay specifically are converting to electric or battery operated, and it's impressive. We have someone that helps us 3 or 4 times a year with the garden, and they have a new battery operated leaf blower. It's incredibly powerful. And she's a very small person, and she said, if I put this on full, it blows me backwards. So that's interesting. And just about leaves and leaf blowing, leaves really are habitat for bees in particular. They also are soil enhancement, particularly if you put your mower on mulch, and then you can compost them and use them for soil enhancement. And they also insulate for perennials over winter gardening. I know leaves are an issue for drainage, and I appreciated what Mr. Hidley said about the commercial and municipal aspects of stormwater and drains. That is an issue, and I can understand that their needs are far greater than the individual homeowner in terms of leaf clearing. But I think if we begin with leaf blowers and continue, I think this is a good thing to do. And that old saying, it's kind of an old chestnut now, but think globally but act locally, and I think this is a prime example of Oak Bay's acting locally. And by the way, I really appreciated all of the speakers that took the time to come and speak to us tonight, and all of the letter writers. I took a little tally, and it's sort of half and half in terms of support. So I'm going to err on the side of the 49% of the letters we received. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Even old chestnuts can have their leaves raked. Councillor Patterson, or Councillor Ney, did you want to? I'm just going to go on. Go ahead.
Were you there?
I had Councillor Patterson. I'll go to you after Councillor Ney if it's not urgent. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate Councillor Green's comments about environmental sustainability, and leaf blowers, electric or gas-powered, are not the best piece of equipment in a yard, so they should be used wisely. But just back to the phase-in of this, and I do think it's very encouraging that the trend that is already moving in this direction. But since we have initiated the Cool Kit program, and we will have volunteers certainly going out and actively working with residents in the neighborhood. And I should know this, but I don't, so I will raise it. I'm taking for granted that Mr. Heideley, who is in our parks, is kind of the purveyor of information to the Cool Kit program. And so if council approves this tonight, then I take it will be Mr. Heideley that will be conveying the messaging to all of the volunteers working on the program. It would be, I think, very interesting to have some tracking on this to see how successful they are in conveying the message out to residents in the community and what kind of positive action that translates into. So I'd look forward to somebody keeping track of that information, and I think it will probably fall to Mr. Heideley, but perhaps Mr. Meikle, I'm not sure. So we can perhaps just confirm that when the plan comes back to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Patterson. I'm not sure the Cool Kit, actually don't know in terms of its tracking. It's not really a staff piece. They're training the trainers and getting out and doing that, but it's led by UBC. So I'm not sure. It's an interesting ask. I just don't know that we're to set that bar that we may not have good metrics on the uptake on that. Probably more so from if we do a grant, we'll have some good sense of what's coming forward. Councillor Ney?
Just my final comments is I think what I like about what's before us here is that it's not like a negative ban where we're just saying don't do this, don't use gas-powered garden equipment. We're saying let's do it this way, and it's a positive message, and these are the reasons why, and we're providing support at a neighborhood level, and we're providing incentives. So together, all of those policy gestures are supportive of residents doing this in a very positive way. And I do want to thank staff for helping script this and getting it more clear. I really appreciate that. And I do want to also thank publicly Dr. Francis Landy, who really started this initiative. He phoned me numerous times last year complaining about the horrific noise, and I could hear it in the background, and he was trying to write a script and not able to do that. And then on top of that, really activated the community and the petition and was able to mobilize and get the ear of many people, of which many of them you heard here today, to share their concerns and their support for this. So thank you to all that. And I do think in the big scheme of things, this may seem like a small thing, but I really am of the belief that lots of little things make big differences. And maybe this is little, but I do believe it contributes to making a bigger difference in the community more generally. Thank
you, Councillor Ney. I don't see other hands popping up for this, so I'm ready to call the question on the main motion. Councillor Green?
I just have one comment. I wanted to thank Councillor Appleton for the idea of the incentive program. I think that will address those on fixed incomes, those that have other demands financially that make it more difficult. So I'm very impressed with that idea and would support it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Any other discussion here before I call the question? I guess I should probably say a couple of words since I haven't said anything yet. I guess first, Councillor Ney, thank you for the motion and for the amendment to it. I too was sort of like, oh gosh, how are we going to get people to do that fast? So I think that was recognized by yourself alone and managed to make those changes. So I appreciate that. I think as it's written now, quite eminently supportable as a piece. I think this helps give everybody some clarity. It just, where I see this coming into the real fore is every day from this day forward, once people know about it, when they go to the store and their lawnmower is acting up or they're looking for a new weed whacker, they'll be like, well, gee, I really should be looking at an electric version at this point, right? And it'll just be an organic shift over the 3 years. And as we get close to that end point, there'll probably be some edge cases that we're going to have to deal with. But I think the 99% will be dealt with through this, just the education and the awareness that is coming. And I think we'll find that other neighboring jurisdictions will be very similar in terms of their approaches. I think we'll find a lot of alignment around the region. So thank you for that. And so I'll speak in favor of the motion. I think it's eminently supportable as it's laid out here. So thank you for that. I don't see any other hands popping up, so I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. As there, I don't think there's any other motions arising from this, so we will go to the item number. To get back to my agenda now. We just have notices of motion, so there's 2 notices of motions, no actions required from council. They're there for our awareness, and they'll be coming back to the next council meeting for consideration. Is there any other new business at this point? I don't see any, so then we're back to adjournment. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Zhelka.
It's a point of procedure. Do these need to be read into the record, or are they simply appearing on the agenda good enough?
Ms. Williams or Mr. Coates, sorry, I should go to the right person.
Through Murdoch. So yeah, to fulfill the requirement to introduce them, they're there before council to see. They're there for the public to know that they're there, and as the mayor indicated, they'll come back to council at the next meeting for a debate and discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Coates. And I sometimes go by habit to Ms. Williams, so just wave at me and correct my my change. I don't see anything else. So now I can take a motion to adjourn. Moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you very much. We will see you all next week, or in a couple of weeks, I guess.